step 4, determining the maximum bid price. So enlighten me a little bit more. How do you do it? I mean, you outlined a few reasons why you need to do it. How do you do it?
Take the emotion out. First of all, the amateurs and the owner-occupiers buy property with their heart.
Mm-hmm.
You're buying with numbers and you're making decisions with spreadsheets.
Let the spreadsheet
Let the spreadsheet
do the talking. Yeah. Okay.
Once you've got all the data, once you've gathered all the information through checklists from the inspection, once you've been through the checklist to check the legals and you've understood the issues in the legals and the inspection of the property which add value and detract from value, you factor that into how much you need to pay for it. So really, your bid price really comes from the information you've gathered.
So this is not a rule of thumb thing, or I think it's like looking at the numbers, and you got different spreadsheet. I reckon then for leasehold and freehold and commercial properties, all with different.
Absolutely.
It asks you the right questions. At the end, it says green, yes; yellow, no; red,
absolutely,
no way.
No, there are some sort of rules of thumb. For example, I would expect to buy a property at auction at in excess of 25% below what that property would be worth in its current condition if it was sold through an estate agent. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now the question is, how much below that how much in excess of 25% can you get it for? But you've also got to factor in how much that property is worth for you, because you've also got to factor in what angle you're exploiting. If you have seen something,
going back to that.
Exactly. You may be willing to pay more for something.
But it has to be part of your strategy.
Yes.
So still the spreadsheet will give me the token because you have future profits or future rental expectations.
And we discussed that earlier with the lot that you looked at. That was a 1-bedroom flat which you can make into a 2-bedroom flat and therefore get a 2-bedroom rental for it.
Therefore I can possibly pay more, but it's part of my spreadsheet.
It's part of your spreadsheet. Of course it is, yes.
That makes sense. Cool. Any other top tips from years in the auction room about the maximum bid price?
Well, first of all, stick to it. And when you've come...
That is a top tip.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, are you tempted sometimes? I know you say take the emotion out, but isn't there sometimes the tendency to think, maybe just a little bit more. There's just one last guy in the room.
Fight it.
Okay.
No, seriously.
Okay.
Now, there's one small fudge factor to put into the spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet will give you a figure. Mm-hmm. What I like to do is I like my maximum bid price. I mean, many of the properties I've bought, I've ended up buying at very odd numbers. 391, 393. 297.
Mm-hmm.
That's because when a lot of people set their limit, they'll say, I'm not paying more than 260 for it.
Okay.
I like that. So I'm going to stick rigidly to it.
Yeah.
If my spreadsheet says, 260, I might just make it 261.
Interesting.
Or 263.
Because other guys might have a similar, they say 360, not more.
Exactly.
And you say, I have another grand in there.
So stick to it. But I tend to find that most people who come up with maximum bid prices, round figures, go for an odd one. And you're more likely to win it.
That's a really good little tip.
But set that maximum bid price before you walk into the auction room.
Brilliant. That's a very, very good tip. I like that. Step 5, and this is very important. Everyone who followed us so far, financing. How to get this thing under your belt. Obviously, you've mentioned that many times. Buying at auctions is not a no money down strategy. So what can you do? We talked about already bridging. You talked about high street lenders and other banks. How typically do you put the financing together in an auction deal?
Okay. Well, generally, it is very, very hard, near impossible, to get a standard mortgage for an auction property because there just isn't time. You won't get the auction. So we got
28 days. The hammer goes down. You've got to hand over a check or banker's draft for 10%.
Yeah.
20 days later, the rest is due.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So there's not enough time to go to the bank and apply for mortgages.
Yeah, and then imagine the surveyor coming round. He's got to come in one of those viewing windows.
Of course.
So it causes a lot of problems. So just leave that to one side.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what other choices do we have?
You need a little bit of cash. I tend to say that to really make a go of auctions, you need to put 10% of the purchase price and enough to cover closing costs.
How much would that be? Just give me a ballpark.
Well, whatever the stamp duty is, depending on the threshold
Yeah.
you're at, and legals and admin fees. So I would say generally for under £250,000 property at about 2%, so about 12% in total, as a rough sort of ballpark. Now, when you're doing use your own cash, one thing that's changed since the credit crunch is that although mortgage finance has become a bit tougher, bridging finance has become much easier. It is far easier.
So just tell me what bridging finance is, so for people not familiar with the term.
Bridging finance is short-term lending. It's normally up to a year that you borrow for. You pay a little bit of a higher rate. The bridging companies take a different view on the lending than normal high street lenders, because they take the view that you're borrowing the money because you're going to do something short term to the property, and then you're going to move that financing away from the bridging onto a more regular lender. So, for example, that property I mentioned before, where it was 2 flats but didn't have planning, a mortgage company would not lend on it, but a bridging company would.
Okay.
Because they would take the view that yes, this planning thing can be regularised, we'd lend on it, and then 6 months later or whatever, you will be getting a normal mortgage on those
Makes
units.
sense. So right now we got 10%, 12% you say on a below 250,000 property.
Yeah.
We got bridging, but those bridges will not lend you 90%, will they?
No.
So what is the kind of loan to value they like to go for?
They will lend up to about 70%. Now the bridging companies, they all have all the auction catalogues. So it's very easy. You ring them up, you say interested in lot number 10, and they will look at the catalogue and they'll be able to tell you roughly what they will lend on it. If it's very, very risky, they might lend less than 70%, but for most situations, they'll lend up to 70%.
So that leaves a little bit of a gap.
That leaves 30%. Now, what I personally do is I involve a lot of private investors in my deals. The mix I like is 10% of my money, because private investors like to see that you're putting some money in the game. You've got some skin in the game, as they say. 20% from private investors, and 70% from a bridging firm. And that's an ideal, optimal mix that allows you to have a pipeline of auction deals. Because even if you've got the money, because a lot of people say to me, well, I've got some cash, why don't I just use all cash? Well, the thing is, you won't be doing that many deals, because you'll have to do one deal, wait for that to finish before you do another one.
So if you use that mix that you have with private investors, it means your money might be in 2 or 3 deals at a time.
Exactly. You have
can
a
cycle it,
pipeline.
and of course, of the leverage of property, you make a lot more with
You get much
cash.
more done. So you have one deal that you're about to bid on, one deal which is in the middle, one deal which is just finishing, and you've got a little pipeline of activity going on.
I want to share something here which is private information, but I am a private investor, and when I heard the term first years ago, I imagined people in dark glass limousines driving around from far countries. It's just everybody's got a bit of cash who wants to invest it, not in the banks or in any kind of other vehicles. So these are normal people who got a bit of cash ready, and actually I got someone invested with you.
Yes.
It's a safe investment. It's normally secured against the property. So it is something that can be done. You got a whole bank, a whole database of those people.
Yes. I mean, it is easier than it sounds for really anyone to attract private investor finance. The important thing is to get out there and let people know what it is that you're doing.
It's something you said a few conversations ago, or one of your field trips. You said, if you have a good deal, the money will find you.
Absolutely.
And I think this is such a key information. People always say, I can't find the money for the deal. Most likely, the deal they bring won't be interesting enough.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but if you do all these steps we discussed, panning for gold, inspecting survey, going through the legals, then maximum your bid price, then people will be interested if you know it's a good deal. Yeah.
Yes, and bring people down. I mean, I regularly have open days where I invite people in to have a look, and I find that. And the other important thing that I recommend when you're working with private investors is fully understand what your private investor actually wants. Some people just want a better return than the bank, and that's fine. Some people want to, if it's a development project, they invest some money, but they want to come along every month and have a look, because what they're thinking of is, this is a way of learning, and perhaps I want to do this myself.
So you can actually maybe negotiate
Yes.
Interest based on what else can you offer them.
Exactly.
Come along once a month
Exactly.
and I pay you a bit less.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some people, with some people that I work with, they've invested some money, but they want us to, because we find property deals all the time. So we then, they want to invest in something similar.
Then
So
next
we'll
time,
find a deal for them and
sense.
offer it to them.
So how would you approach that? Just literally say clearly, what do you want out of it?
Well, yes, you've got to understand what their objectives are for investing.
But when you invest first time, would you start with a small sum first time so you get to know each other, so to say?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's very important. A lot of it is like any relationship. If you meet someone for the first time, you don't talk about marriage and lifelong commitment. You go out for coffee. So start any relationship with small steps.
Prove that it works.
Prove that it works.
So does that mean that this private investor money does kind of 20% in your equation comes from multiple people at times? It
comes from multiple people, and borrow money when you don't need it. I mean, a lot of people say to me, well, I don't really need to involve private investors, but it's very useful to allow people with money a small way of getting in. For example, you might have a simple refurbishment. Get a private investor in to fund the new kitchen and bathroom.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Very simple,
it's not tied
short,
to the
sharp,
auction, not tied to the buying process. It's a quick in and out. You don't need it, but you can start.
Yes.
Because I think the worst situation is when you have to suddenly get to 20% and you haven't built those relationships.
The thing is,
where do you start?
When you've involved someone in a small way in your deal, and you've delivered to time. You've delivered to budget. The outcome is what you said it was going to be, and they've got their money back and their return in the way you said it was going to be. That is what builds confidence. When you've got a list of people like that who have participated in your deals in a small way, then when you're looking at lot number 10 in the catalogue and the sale is next Thursday, and you need £100,000, you're more likely to be able to ring up, pick up the phone, and say, "Look, I need some money. Are you interested in coming in with me on this one?" They're not going to do that cold. But if people have a track record and they've seen your track record and they've benefited from it in a small way over a series of transactions, that's how you get these people in. So no one has invested in my deals in a large way cold. It's all been small steps. So a very simple thing. As I said, with the bathroom and kitchens.
It's a good idea to start with the refurb, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant. In a small way.